How do you explain how these 4 people died?
I'd like you to go back to asking very clearly, why didn't you know? If you're Miss Pentagon, why don't you know the history of actually recategorizing strikes?
But hold on, how did these 4 people die?
The names came down. They claimed it was an accident, that's some kind of glitch. But then they did not restore them to where they should be. They put them in a different place.
Right. So I'd like to see.
That's not a tech issue.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that. One situation that, frankly, where we saw the government was certainly obfuscating, didn't have any transparency, was Anthony Fauci, who we're getting his diaries today, where he was purposely obfuscating about.
Anthony, we're sitting here talking about Americans who were killed in theater, okay, as a result of a war. We are not going to pivot to Anthony Fauci's diaries.
Guys, MAGA pundits have become so shameless that they're now even defending the most shameless acts of the Trump administration. They are now defending the Pentagon and Pete Hegseth for removing the names of the fallen soldiers of the Iran war from the website. Guys, removing the names of the fallen soldiers from the website is like discrediting their sacrifice. I mean, it can't get any worse than this. Last night on Abby Phillip's show, progressive journalists Sabrina Singh and Isaiah Martin literally nuked the MAGA pundits with facts and cornered them into complete silence. Now, I'm going to play some clips from that show. I'll give my opinion as we go.
Tonight, as Donald Trump and his aides assess their remaining military options in Iran, the Pentagon is facing scrutiny over a depleted munitions stockpile and a lack of transparency over the human cost of this conflict. After nearly 2 weeks of U.S. strikes in Iran, Donald Trump announced a temporary pause today. He says at the request of the Iranian regime to allow for negotiations. Iran says no such talks are happening. And despite the pause, Saudi Arabia says it intercepted several drones launched from Iranian-backed militias in Iraq. Now, over the weekend, the Pentagon quietly updated its war casualty database, recording more than 140 additional wounded and restoring the 4 soldiers killed due to the Iranian strikes after they effectively disappeared from the website. Now, after facing scrutiny over why the number of killed and wounded somehow dropped as the Iranian attacks escalated, officials blamed a data disruption. They denied that there was any intentional effort to mask the war's toll. But instead of listing the casualties under Operation Epic Fury, the database now features a new tracking category for killed and wounded troops starting on July 7th. That's a date that coincides with when Trump claimed a new conflict with Iran began in a war powers notification that was sent to Congress. I think this is important for several reasons. I think there's some practical issues here for the troops who are affected, especially the ones who are wounded. But the idea that that they can recategorize these deaths and casualties under a different conflict, even though we all know that this is part of the same conflict, that seems to be an attempt to obscure what is happening.
It is. When I was at the Pentagon, and we did unfortunately lose service members, we were very clear about where they were killed in action and the reason. And this idea that you're going to recategorize their deaths so it fits your political narrative that this war did not take a toll on 18 lives and over 600 wounded is gross. And it is, I think, deeply offensive to the families. I mean, people that I've spoken to at the Pentagon, this is not something that they have ever seen ever happen, a recategorization of how you would determine someone killed in action. And so, for the families of these 4 men and women who were just lost, it's devastating because when we have, the conversation of why they were lost because of this war. They were lost because Iran launched Iranian drones and ballistic missiles at installations where our service members are. And that is the reason.
It's the whole gimmick of saying, oh, okay, we've reached the threshold at which we don't have to notify Congress. So let's just pretend like we're going to start a new conflict. That, I think, seems to insult the intelligence of the American people who know exactly what's going on.
We've seen the Pentagon multiple times actually go through and set up after we've gone through several different kinds of border conflicts, after certain kinds of observations and then strikes, retaliations, recategorize both casualties on the injury side and then those who have died. We've seen this before, again, all the way dating back to the Korean and the Vietnam Wars, in which we've seen the Department of Defense at the time.
I've never seen Department of Defense recategorize injuries or deaths from an operation. I've never seen that. And I was at the Pentagon.
They've done so multiple times.
Indeed,
in the Obama administration, they recategorized the Syrian strikes multiple times.
That strikes, like deaths from a strike versus an entire operation is very different. This was an operation. This is a war. How do you explain how these 4 people died?
I'd like you to go back to asking very clearly, why didn't you know? If you're Miss Pentagon, why don't you know the history of actually recategorizing strikes?
But hold on, how did these 4 people die?
I'm going to stop here for a bit. Guys, I genuinely can't believe that military support for Trump is still hovering around 50%. He's denying promotions based on race. He's lying, covering up the sacrifices of the fallen. He started a war that costs lives without any sort of plan or goal. And his Secretary of Defense was a Fox News host who is nonstop disparaging the state of the military and its service members. I get it. The military generally leans conservative, but Jesus Christ, I mean, how can you vote for someone who actively disrespects the military, who doesn't give a shit about how many die on the battlefield? And secondly, guys, I think the actual deaths of U.S. troops are far higher than they have told the public. I believe at this point, they are hiding the actual numbers to save face. Trump knows he's in deep shit with the Iran war. He knows that he started a war he can't win, so now he's trying to fudge up the numbers of the fallen troops to cover it all up. It is amazing that our entire nation just accepts this lack of transparency. It's amazing the legislature doesn't fight for transparency. I mean, guys, this is yet another example of an administration that is 100% about propaganda, dishonesty, corruption, and recklessness. Imagine holding a ballot in your hand and seeing the name Trump, and even with a mountain of evidence showing him to be criminal, corrupt, dishonest, racist, petty, incompetent, vindictive, reckless, and a narcissist, you still tell yourself, yeah, he's the right guy to lead this country. In all the industrialized nations in the world, you won't find an electorate as gullible, uninformed, and reckless as Trump voters. Guys, I especially feel sorry for the families whose loved ones died during the faux ceasefire. I mean, it is just disgusting that some cheap politicians are using semantics to hide the reality of the sacrifices of our troops. I mean, we signed an MOU to negotiate a deal and paused hostilities. Meanwhile, we continue launching strikes and receiving retaliation, so the deaths resulting are not counted as a direct result and don't count against the Iran war. Of course, we all know that benefits for their families have a way of disappearing in the absence of clear evidence that they died during a war. The entire administration, especially Pete Hegseth, should be sent to prison for these crimes.
And they were struck by Iranian forces.
From the war?
From, yes, the retaliation from the Iranians.
Okay, so it's from the war. Great.
Yeah, I mean,
that seems simple enough.
I don't even know why you would argue otherwise. It's the same conflict. It is definitely the same conflict. And I don't know. I mean, they initially tried to say this was a software glitch, and then they created a whole different place to put these names. Why? Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, what matters is that President Trump has honored these families, and I'm not shocked to hear that there's issues with government websites. Whether or not it was a purposeful obfuscation, I think remains to be seen.
Well, but I think at this point we know that
they changed the classification.
What I would
we
say,
know that this is not. I mean, the names came down. They claimed it was an accident, that's some kind of glitch. But then they did not restore them to where they should be. They put them in a different place.
Right. So I'd like to see.
That's not a tech issue.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that restored. I think we need to have transparency around what's going on. I think one situation that, frankly, where we saw the government was certainly obfuscating, didn't have any transparency, was Anthony Fauci, who we're getting his diaries today, where he was purposely obfuscating about
Anthony Fauci.
That's actually something where we know he was purposely obfuscating.
Lydia, we're sitting here talking about Americans who were killed in theater, okay, as a result of a war. We are not going to pivot to Anthony Fauci's diaries. That's a different conversation.
You're saying that this is a
different
purposeful obfuscation. We don't know that it was a purposeful obfuscation.
That we learned this weekend,
it was.
Isaiah, the other thing we learned this weekend is that the president has been warned by his own Defense Department, by his own vice president, that we are running low on munitions stockpiles. I'm going to play, this is Mike Walls, the ambassador to the United Nations, who was asked about this. And just listen carefully to how he explains whether this is true or not.
Is America backing away from a larger military attack because its military stockpile has been depleted?
Well, look, we have to take a step back here in that a lot of stockpiles were depleted, not only from what we gave Ukraine over the last however many years, 4 or 5 years, and the administration inherited, the Secretary Hegseth inherited a depleted situation.
But you acknowledge
I want to be clear.
Do you acknowledge they're depleted, at this moment?
I want to be crystal clear. The U.S. military, and I've verified this every which way, has everything that it needs to conduct this campaign as effectively as it needs to be.
A tough job he's got there, because he seems to want to blame the previous administration for depletions and then claim that there are none.
I mean, it's just the standard playbook for them. It's just Biden derangement syndrome. It's really all they have at this point, because ultimately we understand that what was given to Ukraine was primarily for ground warfare. When it comes to this situation, I mean, he just said a couple weeks ago that the military had everything they needed to continue and to carry out these strikes. That's what he said. So it's amazing how when this comes down to where we are today, they change their tune. It's not really shocking because this is what they do.
So you can't have it both ways. Are we depleted or aren't we depleted? I want your opinion on that.
The point is that
answer the question. Answer it. Do you think we're depleted or not?
A couple weeks ago that we had everything we needed to carry out these strikes.
Can you answer the question?
So did he lie? Did he lie?
I'm asking you the question.
Did he lie? What do you think?
It matters. I don't believe that the United States.
The reporting is that the president was warned by the Defense Department and by his own vice president that if they continued with a larger war campaign, which he has the option to do, that would dangerously deplete our munitions. So, and I've seen, actually.
So let's stop here for a bit. Guys, never forget Trump used the term suckers and losers for the fallen U.S. service members. I mean, this guy respects no one, yet his followers call him a man of honor. I mean, when he called our fallen troops suckers and losers, why didn't MAGA show any outrage? Why didn't they call out their leader? No other so-called leader of any democratic country, hell, even Putin, would joke about those who have died fighting. At this point, I am stunned to watch this vicious cult mentality and the power of disinformation controlling the MAGA base. Replace the name Trump with Biden, and imagine the outrage from Republicans and Fox News. These people have no principles or morals. They're all about support our troops until that can't be wielded as a political weapon. At this point, guys, Trump has gone from gloating about the low number of deaths, relatively speaking, compared to other conflicts, to just straight up not acknowledging the 4 deaths that just occurred. I mean, we already knew this draft-dodging POS has zero respect for the military, but this is low even for him. Imagine dying for your country in a pointless war and it not even being officially acknowledged. And the irony is that they used the ceasefire as an excuse to do so while ignoring the role that these recent escalations played in their deaths. I mean, F these people, man. And secondly, guys, the thing that really makes me sick at this point is the fact that 19 soldiers are already dead just because Trump wanted to start a war with Iran to please his Israeli friend Netanyahu. None of this would have happened if he had listened to the Pentagon reports in which they clearly warned him not to attack Iran because they were not an imminent threat to the U.S. or its allies. I mean, the man is just disgusting. I remember when a reporter asked Trump's press secretary why Trump attacked Iran when the Pentagon had clearly warned him not to, and her reply was that Trump had a quote-unquote good feeling that Iran was about to target U.S. assets in the region. I mean, the man puts thousands of lives of our troops at risk just because he had a feeling. And now because of Trump's good feeling, 19 troops have sacrificed their lives. I mean, it cannot get any worse than this.
Rather than a lot of people saying this is not true, I've seen a lot of conservatives saying, who leaked this? Which seems to imply that they believe it is true.
I do not believe that the United States is in a position right now where we're not able to continue interceptions. There's 2 kinds of core munitions. But if we're going to look at this right here, when you're looking interception or positive action.
That's just the way you're characterizing it is not entirely accurate. I think there has been, I think the United States military, to your point, will do everything necessary to conduct an operation. But what you are not including here is that they will pull stocks from other combatant commands because our stockpiles are so depleted.
Why are our stockpiles depleted to this level? Do you think
our
that
stockpiles
a small
are depleted
operation
to this level,
like this
you think
was
this
enough
is
to
small?
deplete? You think this is enough to deplete the entire U.S. stockpile?
No. You just said interceptors. How long do those take to make?
That's an excellent question. How long do those take to make?
They take 2 years.
Yes, they do.
And do you know how many we've gone through in this war?
By all means. Do you have that data
No, go
point?
ahead. You tell me.
I'm
You
asking
seem
you
to
to give
know
me the
every
data
answer.
point.
What we have done is we have depleted very, very expensive munitions to shoot down very inexpensive drones, like $30,000 to $40,000 drones.
And to Walt's point, why did we not have a larger supply of interceptor missiles? If this isn't enough to take on Iran, then what about Russia or China?
We're not giving the type of interceptor missiles that we use on the battlefield to Ukraine.
So you're saying,
those are different.
It sounds
so
like
then,
at this
do we have a ready stockpile to take on a
Tony,
larger
it sounds
group?
like at this point, Tony, you're acknowledging that there is a depletion happening.
I'm saying that either so. If there's a conditional, no, it matters here because I don't know the numbers. You don't know the numbers.
Well, I mean, the reporting at the beginning of the war was that we had probably around 1,200 of them. And this has been one of the big issues with this type of war is that we've had to intercept a lot because Iran has had the ability to launch a lot of, cheap missiles. These interceptors cost, $4 million each to create. So it is conceivable that we would be, maybe we're not at zero, but we don't need to get to zero. I don't think they would let us get to zero, but we don't need to be at zero for it to be a problem. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I don't think that necessarily we're going to be getting to that point. That's one of the reasons why the National Defense Authorization Act continues rebuilding stockpiling. I come from Indiana. There's a lot of military industry that creates manufacturing opportunities. That does matter over a year-to-year basis, not just in this administration.
I totally agree
because a lot
with
of those things take a long time to restore and restock.
And by the way, you might not admit this, but we did a lot of investing in the defense industrial base during the Biden administration. It just turns out these things take a lot of time. And when you have something like Iran launching flying lawnmowers at you that cost $15,000 and you're shooting it down with a $4 million missile, that is a problem that our defense industrial base cannot meet right now.
All right, we're going to...
Guys, a couple days ago, Trump was shamelessly blaming Biden for depleting stockpiles of munitions, and it really made me laugh so hard. I mean, if you knew that the stockpiles were critically low, why did you start your stupid war with Iran all of a sudden? You should have waited until we had enough munitions. Guys, you know what? Trump is a malignant narcissist. He can never admit he was wrong, never say he was sorry, never admit that he lost. He's not capable of saying those things due to his mental illness. It is a personality disorder. In other words, not treatable. If it was an illness, Trump could get treatment, in theory. But unfortunately for the world, there is no changing him. At this point, guys, Trump's best option is to just walk away from this war. Bring everybody home, declare victory even, insult reporters who ask anything about it to weather the storm. The majority of his voter base is stupid. They won't notice. Fox will give him plenty of cover. Dems can whine all day, but that's all they do anyway. Gas prices will go down, even with Iran charging ships in the Strait. 6 months from now, nobody will even remember this war. But you know what? He won't do it. He will never end this war easily because he knows his name is all over the Epstein files. And to distract everyone from that, he started a war with no buildup and no plan. There isn't a clear objective, and any move towards peace is sabotaged by Netanyahu, who wants as much done to Iran as possible without Israel having to do it themselves. And because there wasn't a buildup, the American military didn't have the opportunity to stockpile munitions, and they don't know what or how much they need because they don't have a plan of attack or any clearly defined objectives. The whole thing is a shit show with no clear exit. And the last attempt offered Iran a massive bribe, which they would have accepted if Israel hadn't prevented it. Guys, at this point, the entire world knows that Hegseth and Trump have no coherent strategy on Iran and are deflecting for their own problems. They thought they could defeat Iran through missile attacks within 24 hours, but they were wrong. Iran is never going to be winnable without a ground invasion to take out the elements that continuously pop back up after every bombing raid. Since airplanes were invented, generals and war strategists have been trying to win wars with air cover alone, and it has never worked. History tells us that change only occurs when ground forces move in and take out the hidden or sheltered top officials and take control of territory. But Trump and Hegseth know a ground war would be extremely unpopular, so they're launching every missile they can into Iran instead of being strategic. The more they double down on this strategy, the worse it will get. All right, guys, I'm done for today. I'll see you tomorrow with another video.